I'm going to call us to order at 7:02. We're going to do a roll call to order. Sean needed to be home this evening. So let's start with Chuck.
Here.
Carla?
Here.
Aaron?
Here.
Sarah?
Here.
Sean?
Here.
Tom here, and we are called to order at 7:02. So a quick walkthrough of the agenda. We will start with public comment. We don't have anybody here, but maybe somebody will join in the meantime. We'll then, we have no focus on excellence for this evening, but we will hopefully for the next meeting on the 10th. We'll then drive through our consent agenda and any reports we have, at which point, once we conclude those, we'll meet some of the Student Advisory Committee members. At least one of them will be with us, and hopefully a few others might be joining us remotely. We'll see. We know there's a few sports conflicts as well, but we'll see what we can do. And then we'll drive into the financial update, including the special education reserve fund, and there will be including some budget transfers in there, which we didn't officially notice, so we might have to come back to that. Review and approve Director of Finance search process timeline, update on the METCO Program Director search process, and math pathway update on summer progress. And that will conclude our meeting appropriately. Okay, so we do have now a member of the public here, and we'll start with any public comment.
You have a public comment.
There you go, Jeffrey.
Question. In light of the Massachusetts ballot question on MCAS as a graduation requirement, I was just curious how it affects our local public school system. Do we have, over the past 5 years or something, how many students have not been granted a diploma because they did not pass the MCAS? And is there any statistics or any information to share regarding, there was some claim that, the students who did not get a diploma only because they did not pass the MCAS. And then there were some claims that people who had trouble with the MCAS then decided, hey, I give up, and didn't, work to their classes that would have, and therefore, were denied a diploma for 2 reasons. Do you have any information to share on that?
We don't technically have to address public comment, but Dr. Milczewski, do you want to address any of that, or can you address any of that?
Sort of. So we actually, one committee member and I actually had an email exchange on this too, where we were able to share some of the information that you were asking for. We do think it's like a very small number of students who maybe have been impacted, and maybe some of that information may be identifiable. So I can follow up maybe just afterwards with just some more like generalities around the question.
Generalities are over a 5-year or 10-year span or something.
10-year span, and I may be able to speak, maybe include a couple of other local communities and things like that. It just, it's again, probably a small number of students who've been impacted in that way. I just want to be really careful with that too, if that's okay.
Thank you.
But we can follow up on that as well. I'll just shoot you an email right now.
Okay.
Can I ask
ahead.
a follow-up question?
You may, yep.
Okay. Would it impact, though, the students for whom we've submitted portfolios? Like, do you think that practice would potentially change?
Yeah. It's my understanding is that that's still going to, again, I don't know that the intricacies of the ballot question, nor am I necessarily prepared to speak about tonight, but my understanding from sort of my initial conversations with, my understanding is that would not impact sort of what we have for the alt as well.
Okay, thanks.
So.
Okay. So let's move on with the agenda, and we'll start with the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
And a second. First, we have a second.
Second.
Seconded by Carla. Okay, so any discussion? Carla?
If I could just ask, the field trip approval form, it looks like it may potentially have some of the wrong names on it. Robin Coda and Jennifer Gray are listed on there. Are they the coordinators, or are they the people who went last year?
Yeah, so Jen Gray is coordinating the Parker trip.
Okay, so it's not the actual 2 chaperones that are...
She's the French.
I don't know if Jen and Robin are the 2 chaperones. I'm not sure, but I know Jen's coordinating the trip.
So I guess that's my thing. The 2 chaperones listed are 2 other French teachers. Actually, one spot it says French teacher, and another spot it says science teacher. And Robin and Jen Gray are listed. And my guess is that they were the teachers last year.
Okay.
So if somebody can just, after this, we approve it, look at this field trip approval form. I don't know if we use this form for any other thing that
Yeah.
needs the correct people on it. The price seemed a little off to me, and the number of teachers attending says 3 on this form, but it looked like there was only 2 to me. So if somebody could just take a look at it, because I know at one point they list medical needs of students, so you
Yeah.
want to make sure that this form is right,
Okay.
so.
There were a couple of other questions I know from another committee member on just, there was like for the Parker case, there were 2, kind of 2 quotes that were included there, wondering which company we were using, even though we are, so I think there was some questions, confusion. We can tighten that up and, kind of have it in the next packet. I do know they thought, approval was timely, given that they want to get things going, but we can, so if we want to wait on the vote, we can, or if you want us to submit a kind of updated one and email that to the committee, we can do that too.
I'm fine with voting on it. Like I said, my concern is if this form is used for other things, you want to have the right contact people on it.
Yeah.
And right, medical information. If an old form was used, you want the most current medical
Yeah.
information for current students.
Carla, can you refer to which section you're pointing at
It is on page 41,
of the packet?
yeah, and it's field trip approval form.
Yeah, there's 2 field trip approval forms, is what I'm asking.
One's for Coolidge, one's for
Yep.
Parker.
This one is for Parker,
And at the top, it says Robin and Jen as the coordinators.
yes.
And then where are you seeing the chaperone names?
So number of teachers attending is 3.
Yeah. And then it,
And then page 2 has the medical stuff listed. It's written, handwritten, see where it's on the left.
unknown allergy, yeah. But at the bottom, where I was going is, down at the bottom after the promoteur documentation is a section or a page that they specifically included that says Robin is confirmed. It's on page, for some reason, I don't have page numbers on my PDF for some reason, I'm not sure. Robin is confirmed, but possible additional chaperones are Mikhail Daring, Christina Solito, Judy Bullarark, Jess Doherty, Kim Moreau, and Chris Agasarian. So just, it sounds like they're not 100% convinced, not 100% knowing yet, but I also think it's 2 to 3, depends on how many students sign up, so.
Right, and there's another spot where it lists the Parker, potential additional chaperones as well.
Okay,
And I just noticed, because I noticed that they were talking about 2 of the teachers, and Jerry Coyne is listed by the travel agent as a science teacher, but then on the forms, Jerry's listed as a French teacher. So it just kind of caught my attention, and I always look at, see who's chaperoning and making sure that they're RPS
Yeah.
employees.
Jerry Science. That's what I don't know where it says.
Okay.
Yeah.
It says-
Science at Coolidge.
Yeah, and it says,
okay.
on a disclosure form, it says that he's a French teacher. That's on page
So that's an error then.
38.
Jerry is not a French teacher.
If somebody can just take an extra look at it to make sure that would
Yeah, there's a few other things that need to be cleaned up as it goes through, as we officially go through it, right? The fundraising proposal still lists Pamplemousse, which unfortunately we no longer have Pamplemousse. There's other things that just need to be cleaned up. I think this is just trying to make sure we get this early on the docket so it gets provisionally approved and they can start the process, but we might need to have the final approval come through later on once everything is cleaned up and ready to go.
Okay, perfect. They also, this is, as they would probably recognize too, this is last minute kind of put in before, just to get it in for approval. And I think that's why it's in the revised packet too. So what we'll do is if there's approval tonight, we'll make sure to send out a, kind of cleaned up revised version on some of those questions and concerns you have too.
Thank you.
Okay?
Just curious, why would they use 2 different tour companies when they're going at the same time?
We were just talking about
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
No, not publicly.
I was the other member that asked questions. That was one of the questions I asked as
You
well.
want to take it or you want me to take it?
You can answer
All
it.
right, so I'll open up my text to make sure I have their words here too. So, couple things. So, one, there was without going into too much detail on why maybe they didn't like one company, one school feel like there was didn't reach out to one of the other companies because they had used them a couple of years ago, and then they feel like they went radio silent, so it was a struggle to work with them, so it left them without much confidence in that company. That was another company that someone else had explored. And they Coolidge also, Parker also really liked the tour guide who used to be with ACIS, who's now with Landmark. So that gave them confidence to sort of move forward with that company. So they've used both companies before, and, but I think it comes down to their comfort level each.
Ultimately, what I see in both cases is it comes down to the comfort with the tour guide. Because Promotour was chosen by Coolidge because of the tour guide as well.
Okay.
Right, so it comes down to the comfort from the teacher with the tour guide. There are price differences, so that was one thing else we should just align between the two, right? I would hate to start to hear from the community, hey, it costs $200 more to go for Parker than it costs to go for Coolidge, so, we should make sure that that's aligned, even if the contracts come in slightly different, that we figure out how to financially align them properly.
Yeah. And, I mean, then kind of drilling down that far, like Parker's using Landmark, as Tom's saying, because they're more comfortable with that tour guide. But the concern from Coolidge was they had felt like Landmark, once after the shift from ACIS, hadn't been as responsive as they had have hoped. So where do you land on that? You want Parker to be comfortable with their tour guide, and you want to be supportive if Coolidge feels like they were not, the company wasn't as responsive as they felt they should have been too. So, and we want to give schools autonomy to be able to do what they feel meets their school committee's needs.
Okay.
I don't know how to reconcile the price difference, if there's a slight difference either.
We should look at the activities funds or something like that as a way to reconcile
Yeah.
it. There are plenty of activities funds in those
Yeah.
two schools as they stand right now, and if we need to use that, I think that's a reasonable reason to use that fund.
Okay.
You talk to the companies?
So why don't you go back first and negotiate with them and say,
Yeah.
Sounds like we're going to get to the point where provisional approval, but we might want to have some district level
Yeah.
tightening up of the process there.
Yeah.
I have another question or point. The scholarship, the letter that came out for that, it sounds like it was being previously managed by a staff member. Do we have the original intent documentation with that scholarship? It has come up in other scholarships that we need the exact language. So we should follow up and get the exact language of the original intent if we're going to accept that, which I think we should accept it, but we need to know the original intent specifically.
Okay, great. Yep, there is, so we can find that.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Actually, roll call, first of all. Chuck?
yes,
Carla?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Tom? Yes, and it passes 6-0. So we'll move on now to reports, and Dr. Milczewski, we'll start with you.
Just two reports tonight. Just want to make the community aware that MCAS results will be shared publicly across the state tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Families and community members can find them on the school and different district profiles part of the DESE website. We will present more in-depth analysis of the data on the 10/10 school committee meeting. We just want to make the community aware that that will be released. You might start to hear some communication about that over the next couple of weeks. Two, just we were notified late last week that we have 10 National Merit Scholars, 9 National Merit Commended students, 1 National Merit semifinalist. Families will be notified this week, and then we expect to recognize them during the 10/10 school committee meeting on our focus on excellence too. But excited to share that there'll be, again, 9 National Merit Commended, 1 National Merit semifinalist in the community.
Nice. Okay, moving down the list, we'll start virtually with Sean. Any updates from you, sir?
Yeah, just a couple of updates from the Finance Committee. Finance Committee held its first financial forum last week. This one's really just intended to be kind of a review of where we are sort of from a current financial position perspective. There's a lot of great information if you watch the meeting or review the packet. The one thing I'd just call out, to maintain the same level of growth in the operating budget year over year would require about just north of $6 million in free cash, which is not inconsistent with the total use of free cash over the last couple of years. But the free cash position also is relatively stagnated. So the projected FY24 number is the same as the FY22 number, give or take a couple $100,000. So as a percentage of our operating budget, free cash is declining, with uses in the $6 million range. So the FinCom will be taking that up in the October 9th meeting. I believe it's the plan to do the kind of the recommended use of free cash for budget planning purposes. And then the only other thing I'll share, I think I maybe heard Dr. Forum in the audience there, if I was not mistaken.
He is, yes.
So Dr. Forum was identified or selected, I guess, I suppose, as their representative to our Director of Finance Stream, which I know we're going to talk about more this evening, but that was the other piece that was specifically relevant to the schools.
Thanks, Sean. All right, Chuck?
So the naming committee, we had our first meeting a couple of weeks ago, just kind of an organizational meeting. And we are meeting again next Wednesday night with the two groups to have them give a similar presentation that we got here at the school committee. And then at that point, we'll have a follow-up meeting if there's any community. It's like an open meeting where public forum type meeting if anyone has any other comments on it. And then we'll be ready to come back to the school committee with a recommendation shortly thereafter. So we're moving along.
Okay. So your meeting next week is at the public forum or the one after that?
Will be the one after that.
Okay, because you have to post for it and all that kind of fun stuff.
So the next week meeting, we'll have the Vaccaro group and the Hardy group come in and say their piece, and then we'll go from there.
Great, okay.
The charter meeting is tonight, so I'm obviously not there, so. Recreation hasn't met in a while, so that's coming up again, so that's all I have.
Okay, thanks. Carla?
Thanks, Tom. So for Killam, we've had 2 meetings with the MSBA. We had one on September 11th. And I think I may have mentioned this one. I'm not even sure. The weeks all kind of go together. We did a presentation by designers. Tom and I participated in it as well. And it was for the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee, where they really want to see that there's alignment between what our educational goals are and what our design looks like. So that was a great meeting. They were really pleased. We had another meeting with the MSBA on September 18th. It was a preferred schematic call about the preferred schematic design. And we are on target for a October 10th MSBA board meeting where they would take us into schematic design. So, and we have to wait for the vote, but there's nothing that there's no red flags raised that we would have any issues. We've answered all of the questions that they've given us. The designer and the OPM have been really responsive. Our next KSBC meeting will be on September 30th. We'll be nailing down our HVAC systems within the next 2 months, which is huge. And we have 2 community meetings coming up. October 23rd is a site and community use meeting. So we'll talk about how the community will be able to use the school, and we'll talk about the site. And then November 4th is going to be on traffic and queuing. Everybody's really concerned about how the cars are going to queue on site and things like that. And then we were asked at the Financial Forum on their October 30th meeting to give an update on Killam. So we'll give an update on Killam then.
Coach Brindle, on the first piece about the MSBA Facilities Assessment Subcommittee meeting, just want to thank LBA. I thought in that presentation they did a great job organizing and facilitating our presentation. And Carl did a great job. LBA carried kind of the majority of the presentation. I thought it was really encouraging how well they did. So just a huge thank you to them.
And that'll be in our packet if people want to see it. So it'll be in our packet for our next meeting. It'll be up on our website too.
Okay. Awesome. Erin?
So CPAC, I was able to attend a wonderful webinar with Lynn Lyons last week. She spoke about managing anxiety and depression in children. She's really awesome, very powerful, and also very direct. Unfortunately, that meant I missed the pair meeting, but can't always be everywhere at once. The next CPAC event is a meet and greet with the team chairs on Wednesday from 9 to 10:30. And because we're not meeting again for a few weeks, I'm going to plug a movie that they're going to be showing, The Right to Read. There will also be a panel after the movie. This is open for the whole community. That will be Tuesday, November 15th at 6 p.m. in the Performing Arts Center. That's going to be a really great event. So they are looking for people to try to register in advance, so if you can. So keep an eye out for that flyer. It'll probably be in all the school newsletters and widely shared, but keep an eye out for that. And PAIR, the next event coming up is the Autumn Moon Festival at the library, which they are co-sponsoring. That is September 28th from 12 to 3:30 p.m.
Great, thank you.
Did you give the date?
Yes, October 15th is the Right to Read. 6 p.m.
We'll be putting on our Facebook page as an event as well and marketing it. We are joint sponsors with the Friends of Reading METCO and CPAC as well. So you'll see a lot of advertisement for it coming out soon. Sarah?
Just one quick update on the coalition. September is National Alcohol and Drug Addiction Recovery Month. So you might have noticed on the Common, there was a recovery walk, story walk set up, which is a visual kind of storyboard with messages from people living in recovery that was set up. And just want to flag ahead on October 30th, there will be a community theater presentation at Parker called I'll Never Do That, which is being performed by actors with lived experience of substance abuse and tells the story of a family struggling to cope. So that will be free, open to all. You'll see it in the school newsletters and other places. And we are meeting on Wednesday this week.
Okay, great. Sean took my Finance Committee update. Aaron took my Right to Read update. So that'll be fun. And we'll move on from there. So let's start with the Student Advisory Committee. And Dr. Milczewski, do you want to start with the introductions?
Sure. So excited to have Jason here with us too. But a little bit of context, as the community knows, over the last couple of years, we've tried to move closer and closer to compliance with MGL, which requires us to not only have a Student Advisory Committee, but to have 5 board members who are able to meet regularly. I think it's 4 times a year, at least.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah, with the school committee, I think that it's exciting to be able to give our students a direct voice to the school committee. We have a pretty large group now that are able to come together, and they're having elections, we believe, next week to elect the 5 board members. Sachi and Tamia are the 2 returners, so that kind of fills 2 of the spots. And then we'll have 3 more spots to fill on the board, and we'll see sort of next week. But I don't know if Jason came tonight and wanted to share a little bit of maybe what's happening at the high school too. And then hopefully during the year, once we have those 5 board members officially elected, we can introduce them all as well.
Yeah, so we've been starting out very strong this year, a lot of new improvements over the summer. The PTO funded some new tables on Main Street, which have been a huge issue for the past few years. We've been using old art classroom tables on Main Street for students to eat lunch and gather in the morning. And so now we have, I believe, 6 new long tables with charging stations, which have been a huge hit for lunches and also in the mornings. The PTO also funded a motivational speaker at the freshman orientation this year. And we also have some new ceiling fans in the 3rd and 4th floor classrooms, which were super helpful for the first 2 weeks of school with hot temperatures. We also have a bunch of important dates coming up. This Wednesday, there's a field trip for Innovation Career Pathway students doing the manufacturing and engineering pathway. Excuse me. So we have 50 students attending this. I believe it's to a local university, but I forget exactly where. We also have the internship fairs for seniors this week during lunch, and that's just to get a head start on all the internship programs that begin in the spring for 2nd semester and specifically the 4th quarter. We do have the freshman parent night coming up on October 1st for freshman parents to meet the school counselors and get more information about how students are supported and how the advisors are helping different students. We have a bunch of different adjustment counselors that are new this year, and also the guidance counselors. Also, October 5th are the SATs here at RMHS, and there's already over 200 students signed up to test, which is one of the biggest groups that we've had in a while. And then coming up also that week on October 8th during Flex is the activities fair for all students, which has, through the past, I believe, 3 years since it started, it's become one of the biggest events for clubs and extracurriculars to find new students. It's probably one of the most attended events of the year. All students go down to the gym and usually walk around, see all the different clubs represented. I want to say we have at least 60 clubs that have signed up to present there, and that's a great way for especially freshmen who haven't seen many clubs or had an experience to join different extracurricular activities. They have always been able to find a bunch of new ways to get involved, which is definitely one of the best ways to meet new people and have a successful high school career. We also have the PSATs, October 23rd, which all 10th and 11th grade students are invited to take this year. Following last year where it was the first time it was during the school day, it will be the same thing this year. So the morning is dedicated to the PSATs for 10th and 11th grade students with a late start for freshmen and seniors, which also allows more students to take the PSATs without having to deal with weekend conflicts and different timings issues. And then also that week, a super busy week in October, the 29th is the National Honor Society induction for the class of 2025. And those are most of the big dates coming up in the next month, but there's a few big announcements that we recently heard about, like the Thanksgiving football game this year being held at Fenway Park against Stoneham. And so that's going to be a huge event for this year. Tickets are already available online, and that's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving at Fenway Park. And then this week, we also have the Swiss exchange students visiting. They were in school last Wednesday and Thursday, I believe, and got to see different classes, and then also went on a field trip to Boston at the end of last week. And the students will be going to Switzerland, I believe, in April. And then also a new program this year that was figured out was the RMHS students are all able to get S cards for the MBTA at half price, allowing students to explore Boston and other different areas at a cheaper fare. They're free to get, and they're available in the high school main office or athletics office right now. Just as a quick update, we spoke about in our first student advisory committee meeting last week about some goals that we want to achieve this year. We based it off of last year's achievements, which were mostly degendering some bathrooms in the drama suite and the main office, adding water filling stations to the field house with, I believe, 2 more on the way soon from leftover budget from last year. And then we talked about how we want to address keeping the infrastructure clean and safe. Definitely a big problem has been bathrooms with the last 2 years. Last year, I believe we put in 40 work orders to fix different appliances in the bathrooms, lots of things breaking and being torn off the walls. So that was a big focus for this year. And then also just making the school more accessible and adding some more investments in different ways to add, like water filling stations and better ventilation in the field house, I believe was something we spoke about. Just ways to make students more comfortable in school, especially with extreme heat or cold in the winters.
All right, thank you, Jason. Any questions for Jason?
Thank you for your leadership on this, and I'd also like to thank Tom, too. I think if you talked to a lot of this a couple of years ago, if you talked to a lot of local communities, I think kind of the process of having a student representative on the school committee is a high school principal finds someone in the community, the school, in the high school community, and asks them to come serve. I think that you had dug up the MGL language, which not only requires the 5-member board, but also amongst them to elect a chair, who then the chair serves as the non-voting member of the school committee too. So I think that I just feel, I'm encouraged that we're moving closer and closer. When I say closer, we didn't have our elections in the spring, which I know would bring us into probably full compliance with MGL. But seeing some of the impact that this group has had over the last year and to continue to have that line of communication between the students and school committee, I think is really exciting. So thank you to you and to your peers for your leadership, and also thank you to the committee for making this possible and opening up these doors of communication.
Great. Jason, you didn't really tell us much about yourself. Some of us know you a little bit, but give us a little bit of your background as well.
My name's Jason Walsh. I'm a junior this year, and I'm mostly involved in the arts. My role in the student advisory committee, I've really been advocating for changes in the arts department. We have a new arts department head this year, so that's something I worked closely with the the principal and other advisors in the arts department with, to be on that selection committee to find our new arts department head. I'm also super involved in the sciences and different extracurriculars. I'm leading the A World of Difference group this year, which is returning with a new advisor. And then I'm a member of the drama club, the select choir, all the different subgroups of the choirs, the choir secretary, a bunch of different involvements with, and then the cooking club, which is coming back after a few-year hiatus, and yeah, just a bunch of different extracurriculars.
Great, thank you. All right. And with that said, just so you know, protocol-wise, you're welcome to stay or leave after the student announcement. It's up to you. Sometimes we find that students are doing so much that they need to come and then go, but you are, in this role, you are also, as Dr. Milczewski mentioned, a non-voting member of the school committee, so your input is valuable throughout the whole process if you're willing to stay. So, but don't feel any pressure like you have to stay, okay? All right, so with that said, let's move on to the end of year financial update and the Special Education Reserve Fund update. And I will mention, we will not vote tonight because we did not notice to vote. So we'll notice to vote at our next meeting, and I'll mention when that might be at the next agenda item. So Dr. Milczewski, you want to start with this and we'll jump in?
Yep. Great. So I think everything you find on page about 70 is 70 of your packet. Just one thing I'd like to flag in the Special Ed Reserve Fund is you'll see sort of in the last paragraph of the narrative that we still, as this right, the FY24 end of year report is not yet completed. So that's still in the process. So when that's updated, we'll have sort of a more updated table at that point as well too. So we'll probably hopefully the 10-10 meeting, but if not, the meeting right thereafter too. Other than that, I don't have any other commentary.
Any questions from the committee? I'll just raise a couple of the quick points that I noted earlier. I'm not looking for answers, just points of the observation. The extended day revolving account went down rather significantly in 1 year. I would have expected to be maybe half that decrease. So I just want to make sure with all the increases in salary and whatnot we put in last year and other contracts and whatnot that we are maintaining that sustainably. So I'd love to see the forecast that Chris has for that, and you know, as Kate and are able to work with Chris on that to make sure we're good to go for the whole year. I don't want to have what we had a couple of years, 3-4 years ago, when we had to make adjustments in January, if we can avoid that. So that's one. And then the other one was we do have a little bit more in the revolving fund for the kindergarten as well, so we can, you know, that can help us as we go forward for the next few years. So we'll just have to look at adjusting the forecast appropriately to account for that. So it's good that we were able to keep those at the levels and then even augment it slightly as a result too, so. Okay.
I mean, I'll even just add one other thing, one revolving account we're really interested in this year too is also the food service line too, knowing with universal breakfast now, we've been seeing higher than anticipated participation, which is really exciting. Also knowing that we've also had to add staffing, so I feel like right now we feel like we're in a really good place with that account, but that's something that we're going to see. I think it's going to be a little bit different than maybe it hasn't been over the last couple of years.
Yep. Yeah, that one grew by almost 400,000 in last year, right? So that's a pretty large chunk of change there. So yeah, it'd be, as we build out the forecast of these different revolving funds, it'll be good to see how things are going to go. And if we have any specific plans on school choice, I think we talked a little bit about that during budget cycle, but we know there's going to be even more going into that fund this year. So as we think about it, let's plan appropriately. Okay, anything else? All right, that naturally transitions over to the Director of Finance search process. So Dr. Milczewski, you want to start with that?
Great. First, would like to thank Dr. Derek Pinto for his year plus of service in the Reading Public Schools, who's moved on to be the Assistant Superintendent of Finance in the Lowell Public Schools. So in the packet, you will find more information around the draft search process pending approval. I'd just like to make a couple of points as you look through that. One, we recognize that this is not an ideal timeline timeline to be hiring a Director of Finance and Operations. Therefore, we have also talked to, are mindful of potentially shifting to an interim in the process if needed. We've talked to the posting closed Friday. We've talked to candidates who are coming in for an interview that there's a possibility that we do shift to an interim to allow us to give, some more flexibility to post in a more favorable timeline sometime later in the, late winter, early spring. So that's a possibility in the search that I want to raise to the committee. The second piece in that too is I mentioned the word internal interim here in the packet. I would like to say that our assistant business manager, Kate Finnegan, is awesome. She was the business manager in Stoneham. The town and school side is extremely qualified to be able to do the job. We also think that at this point, Kate's pretty open about it, that it's not something that she wants to step into right now, just at this point in her career, with just, her own family and personal commitments. Would step into the role if that was something that we had needed, and we'd have all the confidence in the world in her. And at the same time, we would like to have someone by her side as a teammate too, which I think would be the best sort of support for her and for our office as well. So while we have a good option to fall back on, we also want to be responsive to sort of her needs as well in the situation. So we will start interviews this week. I see Dr. Coram in the audience, who will be a part of the committee. I will loop back to the committee if we feel like we're in a position where we want to move the process forward, whether that be with a nomination or recommendation to hire. At that point, we'd obviously have to pull the committee together for a vote and approval. So there's more on that to come over the week. So again, appreciate the committee's understanding that we're on a tight timeline here. Appreciate the understanding and flexibility of us, potentially having an interim option. And we're excited to explore some candidates and see who we can bring in to join our team.
Go ahead, Chuck.
So if you do decide to go beyond, instead of interim, to potentially hire somebody, will the committee have an opportunity to meet that?
Yeah, great question. How we're seeing it now is if we are to move into a full-time, someone who we think is a candidate for the full-time position, we would move forward in the process of likely having interviews with the school committee, and whether that's, a public interview like we've done in the past, whether we have a couple of, small members of the team meet with them in a smaller group, we will figure that out. But I wouldn't feel comfortable hiring someone for the full-time position if we did not have, school committee members have the chance to interview and meet them. If it's for an interim position, I feel like we'd probably want to be able to move a little bit quicker. And to be honest, I think at this point, that's likely the direction that we're leaning. So in that case, we probably have a little less involvement from the school committee in terms of interview and direct meet and greet.
So on that front as well, a couple of notes here is, one, when we started this a couple of weeks ago, we wanted to see who might have availability, and I reached out to Sean to ask if he'd be willing to be the school committee member on the committee, and he said yes. So officially, I'm acknowledging that Sean is a school committee member in the interview process for the time being. So I want to thank him for that and willingness to step up, because some of these meetings are in the middle of the day, and we all have different challenges in the middle of the day as well. So that's one thing. Second is, what I alluded to before is, if this process moves forward, say this week or even early next week, we might have an interim meeting between this and our next meeting just for this purpose, just to make the official appointment so that we can have the vote and appoint. As you all know from the committee perspective, this is one of the positions that we as school committees actually do vote on and do approve as hired positions. So we'll find a suitable time probably to have hopefully what becomes a 5-minute meeting, but maybe it'll be in the morning, maybe it'll be quickly in the evening. We'll have to find a time that works for everybody to do that so we can move that forward. If that happens, I will probably layer on the transfers that we just postponed as well into that same meeting. So it'll be 6 minutes instead of 5 minutes. But just want to put that out there so everybody's aware of that as well. Okay? So could be Friday, could be Monday, could be sometime next week, depending on how quickly the process moves this week. Okay. Any other feedback on the search process that anybody wants to give? Sean, thanks again for stepping in to fill it for us, bud. All right, so moving on then, let's move on to the Metco Director position update. Dr. Milichowski on this one too.
Great. So you'll see some more information in your packet as well.
It's an appointment.
Good. Yep. So you have some more information in your packet too. As a community at this point would know, Mr. Curtis Martin will be transitioning to be an operations leader in the Boston Public Schools, which we think comes with a significant increase in both salary and scope of responsibilities. In his new role in Boston Public, he'll be overseeing a portfolio of 12 schools in Boston Public, as a liaison between the central office and the school on anything relating to operations, so including discipline, HR, and budget and finance. So excited for him and disappointed for us as well. I just want to take a couple of minutes and speak about Curtis's impact on our district. Well, he's been here 3+ years. As you know, when Curtis had started, I had received a lot of feedback from Metco HQ and from a lot of our families around the improvements that were necessary in our community to be as strong of a program that our students deserve. I continue to really appreciate the work that Mr. Martin did during his time. One of the most obvious was, expanding our enrollment from in the 50s up towards close to 110 with the support of the school committee, DESE, and Metco HQ. Also now building out what used to be sort of a one-person staff model for the entire district to now is a 8-person model in some of the roles that I think have been really creative and innovative to meet both the needs of Boston resident students, but also Reading resident students with a particular focus on social and emotional and counseling needs. Also his continued focus on opening doors of access, adding late buses, opening students' eyes to opportunities post-secondary with HBCUs, opportunities for Reading and Boston families to come together. I think he's done a really amazing job of building out a vision of what our community can be and what a good Metco program can be, and helping us to start to move in that direction too. Plenty of work to be done to continue to build out our program, but I think he's left a really important legacy in our community that I have a ton of appreciation and respect for him as a leader. So huge thank you to Curtis as well. We spent a lot of time, Curtis has hinted to me he was looking to eventually to take this step in his career, so we've talked, many times over what model would make most sense for us. I think the good news for us is we feel that we have a really good pool of talent in district to be able to fill these roles. We have a lot of staff members in our Metco SAC roles who I think have the skill and the interest in eventually taking on an expanded leadership role. So we were looking for this, when Curtis left, to be able to have an internal staff member to be able to build that pipeline of talent. The challenge was if we shifted someone from a Metco SAC role into the full-time director role, we'd be pulling someone out from a direct role impacting students day to day. And we know the difficulty of finding someone to be able to fill a counseling role, particularly a leader of color, which is really important in these roles as well. It did not want to have a significant impact on students when the year had just started. Therefore, in collaboration with Curtis and with our Metco team, we decided to name 2 of our Metco SACs as co-interim directors for the year. Cindy Marte, who has been our longest tenured elementary Metco SAC. She's our Birch Metco SAC, will be taking on a lead at the elementary level. Jerica Santiago, who is the Metco SAC at the middle school level, will be the secondary interim Metco director, and they'll work together to assume all responsibilities at the district level. A lot of Curtis's work at the district level is heavy in the summer around recruitment of students, enrollment of students. We've been meeting as a team to map out how that, those responsibilities will shift on those 2 leaders now as they carry additional responsibilities. But we are excited about both Cindy and Jerica. I think they'll do an amazing job in the role, and we look forward to supporting them to continue to move our program forward. Come springtime, we will then look at a search for our full-time Metco director and think about what model makes most sense to us now that we have a model to try this year and we've had more of a traditional model. So we'll come back together in the spring and see. This was announced to the Boston resident families early last week. Mr. Martin and I held a family Zoom to meet with any families with questions, concerns, or feedback. And then this information was shared out with staff and with families in various newsletters last week as well. Just want to make sure the committee and the community heard that update, and happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Chuck?
So I guess theoretically, the heavy lift, the summer work will be done by what is probably going to be a new person at that point in time. So
Yeah.
we're not really putting that part on the interim people's jobs.
Correct, yes. So we know that October 1st is the big day for our enrollment numbers. So sort of once October 1st passes, at that point, we don't receive any, additional funding for students to come in at that point. So I feel like a lot of times, and Curtis has spoke about after October 1st, enrollment really slows down. What does pick up though, starting to, February, March, April is the recruitment process. As you know now, there's a new enrollment process for Metco. Families can rank their districts of their choice, which didn't used to be an option. So there's even more of an importance of getting out in front of families. So there is going to be that push for Jerica and Cindy and our team to be out in the community and trying to drum up interest for Reading, which is again, one of the communities a little further away from the city. I think that will be a challenge, but in terms of The actual enrollment process and the interview process, those are things that are going to be May, June, July, when we should have someone in place at that point too. And in full transparency, we are interested in how this model works. I mean, Curtis, I tease him sometimes that he has done a great job building up, building leaders across all of our schools, that some of those scope of responsibilities that he used to carry as the director are now living in the school level. So we'll see sort of down the line, is the traditional model of having one METCO director what's best for us in a model where we also have 8 leaders? Or is it better for us to do something more creative, more outside the box? And I don't know, but it gives us a year this year to assess that.
Anybody else? I mean, I think you hit on the key things I was concerned about, the recruiting, both from a student perspective, but also a staff perspective, right? To make sure that we can continue to recruit, maintain, train leaders of color as well, that Curtis has been huge in that part of the process too. So I'm looking forward to Cindy and Jerica continuing that process in the meantime, and figuring out how we best manage that on a go-forward basis too. Okay. Anything else from anybody else? All right, I think we're done with that topic, and we'll move on to the Math Pathways update. Dr. Hardy, I gave you sharing permissions if you would like to share, or I can do it from here.
I'm happy to share. I have it all queued up just in case.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Let me just put it into presentation mode. All right, how does that look?
Looks good, but it's a little bit forwarding your slide set. There you go.
There we are.
Yep.
All right, well, hi everyone. So actually I wasn't going to put together a slide show for you tonight because I know I was just giving a quick update, but when I started digging in, there was so much good happening that I thought, even though I'm going to go through some of this quickly, I would just memorialize some of it in this presentation for you to review after, and we'll make sure that this gets thrown into the packet too. All right, so we're going to just talk about a few different areas that occurred over the summer. And the first one, jumping right in, is summer geometry. As you know, we ran a new summer geometry course this summer. And just to remind you, the purpose of this initiative was giving our high school students another way to accelerate their high school math pathway. This had technically always been on our math pathway that students could access a summer geometry class, but previously, at least in my years in Reading, we hadn't offered one. So this was like a really concrete way, and that's something also that the district sponsored and was free to students. So it's intended for our rising 10th graders, but we also have rising 9th graders this year who are kind of it. There's just some details here for folks that are interested in learning a little bit more about it, but basically it was a 4-week class. 15 students participated. All of them are now enrolled in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, which to me is like success. That is what we were looking for. We also have a plan in place to continue to work with and support those students this year. Again, since it's our first time through, we're not sure what supports they'll need, but we just have carved out the time so that we can be proactive in that regard. We got some really nice feedback from the students and families that participated. They gave a lot of positive feedback about the way the course was set up, the workload and such. They really appreciated our teacher and the energy she brought to it and sort of how she made the 3 hours go by quickly. We actually had students, we were sort of debating how much homework assignments and like takeaway work students would be able to handle after being in 3 hours of math a day. And the good news is I think the students we had this summer, they were so motivated and such amazingly dedicated students, they actually said they could have handled even more homework. So you don't hear that often from students. And so that's one of the adjustments we'll look for next year. And then just continue to be creative with the 3-hour class. It is a long time in the summer for students to be there. But overall, we feel like this was a really great first run through for this course and look forward to continuing to offer this as a really viable opportunity for our students to accelerate in the math pathway.
Sarah, do you mind really quick? I like the anecdote you shared with me a little while ago about the grade 9 student, entering grade 9 students who were in, and can you mind just speaking a little bit about how they engage and participated? Because I think that's a thing that's of interest. Is that something we can scale up in the future too?
Yeah, we had, as you know, we had 2 rising 9th graders who really just like everything about their experience in Algebra 1 and 8th grade supported that they could handle the rigor of this acceleration, and they just thrived this summer. The teacher reported that they would finish any independent work quickly, and then she would find them off in the corner just, continuing to work through different theorems, and they just loved being there and, picked up any challenge and ran with it. So we're really excited to have this opportunity also. As you heard me talk, every time I talk about Math Pathways, it really is about customizing to the needs of our students, and we know we have lots of different types of math learners in our district, and we just want to ensure that we have opportunities for every type of learner. And so this is an exciting way to challenge those 2 students.
Thank you.
So middle school math, is a spot obviously where we always look to our Math Pathways because it's the first opportunity where students might accelerate, and or just making sure that the math instruction our middle school students are receiving is really high quality so that they are ready for high school math and beyond. And so just to share out the numbers, because I know this is something that often folks are curious about, just sharing our enrollment this year in 7th, 8th grade math. A reminder, these are students who in 6th grade took a series of assessments and were offered the opportunity to go into 7th, 8th grade math. So we're excited to continue with this acceleration point. We think for some of our students, it really works well, and they really thrive on this trajectory. Another new thing for middle school this year that we look forward to refining next summer and continuing with as we offered some summer work modules. We think this is a really great way to help all students. So it isn't just about students accelerating, but it is about that preventing some of that summer regression if we can, and hopefully getting kids excited about math. So these were a series of modules that students could complete over the course of a number of weeks in the summer. We had one of our middle school teachers who was monitoring, kind of going on, reviewing work, and if students had questions, responding to them. So I will let you know at the end of the summer, we had a handful of students who were rising 8th graders who did take the assessment to see if they would move into Algebra 1. For each of those students, the middle school principals reviewed the results, talked with the families, and just based on how students scored on that assessment, and then based on the conversations with families, we just had a very small number of students who sort of went ahead into Algebra 1, even though they hadn't been in 7th and 8th grade math.
Sarah, I just want to make one more point on that too. Like, I just want to make sure the community is aware that with all the additional summer work and summer modules offered, we didn't expect or hope or necessarily want this to mean that it was going to have more kids sort of like move up in the level, right, or skip a level. We thought it would open the door for maybe a couple of kids who need a little bit of an extra push, but we're also mindful of we did not want to put kids and push kids who weren't quite ready. And again, over the summer, independent modules, we're aware that there's only so far that can move the needle. So I just think that because we only had what we're saying here is to make it not identifiable, a very small number of kids make that jump, that for us does not mean that the modules were not a success for us. I just want to make that clear too, because we don't want to push kids up unless we feel like they are truly prepared for that next level course.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. I think that's an important thing to understand about the process. We are going to be gathering, feedback has gone out, I believe, so we're still waiting for it to come back. And we think that we have lots of room for improvement. We had some really bad tech glitches with Google Classroom and one of the platforms we were using. We've got some really great feedback from students as they came back into school this September that we will be able to implement. So I think that these modules will become like a really strong thing we can offer families and students especially kids who really love math.
Can I interject before you move on? Oop. So just, is there a reason, or are we considering a similar in-person type session like we did with the geometry, where we would do four weeks of class if somebody wants to try to move forward, actually instructed and handheld like we did with geometry for 7 to 8? I know we're not trying to push necessarily, but there's a difference between pushing and then not, I'll say, fully supporting that move, for lack of a better way to say it. So is there a logic that we applied there? Is it just a staffing issue? Is it a philosophical issue?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to think about that a little too, but I guess off the cuff, I would say that I feel like the process we have when we select students for 7-8 is really strong. And I think there's usually just a couple of students who really, we see that burst of growth over their 7th grade year. And I think if we continue to refine the modules, we can do an even better job of prepping them. I don't know that this would be like a whole class full of students who would be ready to take that jump, but it's definitely something we can explore. I guess one of the reasons I'm thinking that is when we did sit down and review the few students who were interested in taking that placement test to see, we did look back at what they had scored in 6th grade and sort of like what was our placement decision, right? We obviously want to go back and see, like, this is a student that's now interested in moving on. How did we follow on that placement decision? And we felt like what we were seeing at the end of the summer still really lined up with what we had been seeing the year before, except in the very few cases where we, really talked with families about what this would look like to miss that class and to press on. So I think you raise a great question. We're always looking to expand and come up with new ideas to support students, but as of yet, that hasn't really felt like a strong need.
Tom, I think, Sarah, I'm going to build on that too a little bit, of the idea that what makes them different is geometry. None of the kids have taken geometry, and it's a set of standards that we have to meet over the course of the entirety of the course, which all students are coming in from the same position, having to master certain standards. When we're talking about kids who have not made that jump to be, kind of move up at sort of the next level of math, the middle school level, you have kids who have gaps across different standards from, all different areas of, math from the years before. It's not just a new set of standards. So I think at that point, you're talking about a lot of students who may have gaps in certain areas or may need support, remediation in certain areas, but that's not going to be consistent across all of the kids too. So it would have to be even more of like an individualized, sort of classroom. Could you do that? Absolutely. But I think it's probably a harder thing to build than probably being able to build a standalone geometry class.
Wouldn't it be the grade 8 math that's incorporated into the 7-8 math?
So if I back up, if you give the kids who didn't make the cut to be able to move up.
Who took grade 7 math?
To grade 7 math. The reason why they didn't make the cut would be different for different kids.
Oh.
Right? Some may struggle with number sets. Some may struggle with basic algebraic reasoning. Some students may struggle with fluency of basic facts. Some students, there's different things that students may struggle with. Where you go into geometry, you're building a course and everyone's taking the course. It has to matter certain standards. So I think it's a different game.
We have to figure out how to play the game.
Yeah, I'm not saying, no,
Yeah.
I like the idea. I do. I just don't think it's as simple as.
Yeah, it's probably not as simple as your points are 100% valid. I think the question is, how do we use iReady? How do we use other things to
100%.
fine tune it a little bit? Or, how do we support during the school year to fill those gaps? And then the summer becomes literally, like Aaron's question, the grade 8 math content, right? So such that we have confidence we've closed gap A, B, and C, and now it really is grade 8 that we're having to fill. So just as we continue to improve, and none of this is negative in any way, shape, or form. There's a huge amount of positive in this overall step. It's just, all right, is there another step? Is there another step, right? As we can continue to keep improving.
Yeah, I'm even thinking, like, I opened up an iReady report too, and it's broken down by the domains. You'll see, as you know, geometry, measurement data, algebra and algebraic thinking, number operations. And I have kids here who are on the cusp who all are wildly different profiles. So again, there's a way to do that. Technologies could be a great tool to support us here. It's just tricky. I appreciate the push. I don't think we've pushed as far because of that reason, but it's something we could and should explore.
Yeah, if we start thinking about it now for next summer, we should start thinking about what gaps we've got to close and how we customize gap closing throughout the year with the additional math supports we put in place throughout the year.
Yep.
And then maybe another reassessment towards the middle to end of the year and say, what's the next gap we've got to close? And are we ready to just start with 8th grade math over the summer or something else like that? But it takes strategy and it takes time and focus, right? So all of which we have, but we haven't, we have a little bit of because we're focused in a lot of different places. So I'm fully aware of that.
And the last thing I'll add on that too is I guess I underestimated too how many kids would have genuine interest over the summer of like really digging in on math. And Sarah went through all the feedback that Janelle was giving to students, and I think was blown away by like students' engagement over the summer, but also then therefore the amount of feedback that Janelle was giving students over the summer. It showed us there's a lot of kids who were like eager for this, which I think shame on us maybe, or me, for thinking that there wasn't as many kids as there was who are eager for more in the summer. So we'll look into it. We'll loop back. Appreciate the push.
Okay.
Can I ask a few questions? Oh, sorry, are you still going, Sarah?
We can go.
I haven't seen your, you still have more to do. I can wait till the end. Okay, no, I can wait till the end. I'm making a note of my questions, so.
Okay, all right. So the slide up there right now is just a little bit of data on how students did access the modules and, how many students completed them. So just there in case you're curious. I was really happy to see that, 93 7th graders joined the Google Classroom, and then 59 rising 8th graders joined the Google Classroom. That right there to me was like a step to say, hey, I'm interested in this. So it was really great to see that participation. All right, 2 more quick areas, sorry. So we piloted a really interesting program. We were able to receive a grant from METCO Inc. that allowed us to run some summer math tutoring essentially for some of our Boston resident students. The goal of this was to provide that opportunity for our Boston resident students to improve their achievement and possibly set them up for a later acceleration along the math pathway. We also really wanted to be able to customize it to their individual needs. So I won't go through this, there's a lot of details here if you're interested looking at it, but essentially we provided the service to 6 students. It was a mix of in-person and asynchronous work, and we learned a lot from the process. There were some things that worked well, and there were some things that didn't work well for our students, but now we know, and we have like a really nice template for something moving forward, and hopefully we'd be able to continue to pursue some grant funding, because we think that this type of opportunity is really important. We know in particular that our Boston resident students often don't meet with the same levels of success in math as their peers, and so this is an area that is certainly a priority for us. One other program that we were running this summer, we did provide some tutoring for Title I students, and this initiative we undertook because we know that the students that are identified in our 2 Title I schools for needing support in math are kids that would benefit from tutoring to prevent regression. As you may remember, our 2 Title I schools are Killam Elementary and Parker Middle School, and in each of those schools, they rank order students to identify students that will be eligible for services that are provided by those Title I funds. This summer, we did offer to all of our students who were just finishing grades 4 through 8 access to tutoring at Mathnasium in Reading, paid for by Title I funds. We had 3 students from Killam and 4 from Parker who participated. So we look forward to being able to take a peek at iReady results as they come in this fall to see if those services, added or I guess supported the students in not regressing over the summer. Obviously, we're proud of the work we accomplished this summer, but looking forward to continuing to improve math pathways for all of our students. Once again, the math lab will be up and running at RMHS. We are still working with the high school to perhaps find a different location. Space, unfortunately, is at a premium right now, so we are still in the library, which was not our first pick. But we are implementing a new sort of sign-out procedure to gather some new data from students so that we can learn about what brings students into the math lab and how we might attract other students as well. I wanted to mention too that both of our middle schools have been looking at some of their blocks of time throughout the day and are starting to talk about and explore how we're running math intervention and enrichment at the middle school level. This is very new work, so I don't have details for you yet, but I wanted to pop it on there because I do think it's an important piece of what I was talking about earlier, the fact that those middle school years are so key to developing students' foundational math understandings. The other piece that I wanted to mention is that some of this exciting work has led to the fact that we are going to have students who are accelerated beyond even our pathways. So that's one of the things that we are starting to plan for. I've already had conversations with our new math department head to say, this is the timeline we're working in, let's start to think about what the options might be. So more to come on that. I don't have any more details right now, but I just wanted to let you know that's something that is on our radar and that we're already working on. And then the other thing, all of these programs that I talked to you about tonight are also things that we will be tracking students that participated, and as best we can, trying to determine, you know, what the impact might have been through the various assessment results that we have. So, happy to take any questions you might have.
Karen.
So this is all really exciting, and I will reiterate that I'm so impressed by how much was accomplished in a short amount of time. When you think that this time last year, the committee had not even started yet, or had barely started. So thank you for everything that has been done. To start with the summer geometry class, can you remind me, Sarah, was that leveled? Like, was it college prep, honors?
Yeah, the course was designed to mirror the honors geometry course.
Okay, so those students got credit for honors.
Yes. I'm not sure how it shows up on the transcript. That's something I know that we talked about, but I don't want to speak off the top of my head. Can I get back to you on that?
Yeah. I'm more wondering, can they go into honors algebra 2, because that has huge implications for what comes the following year?
Yes, so I believe all of the students did go into honors algebra 2.
Okay, thanks. And how, you know, in talking with the teacher, did you get a sense of like how much bigger the class, how much she thinks she could accommodate if we had more interest next summer?
I didn't ask that directly, but it's a really great question. I do know, like, we had multiple students mention that the class size felt really good to them and that they were able to get individual attention. So I do think we would, just keep that in mind, that keeping it to a slightly smaller size than a typical math class does really allow students to get that intense instruction.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm just curious if we end up having more interest now that it's happened and it was so successful. I also just want to be cognizant that we continue to offer it to rising ninth graders, so just.
Yeah.
Okay, and then regarding the middle school summer modules, forgive me if you said this, but did any of the 38 who rising seventh graders switch what they were going to take this year? Like, did any of them who were planning on taking 7 math switch to 7-8 math?
No. I don't think, like, right now there isn't really a mechanism to do that. I don't think that taking the modules at this point, given, especially because we worked really hard in the last 2 years actually to build in a much bigger break phase, if you will, for students at the end of 6th grade. And, our middle school principals this year, more than ever, were reaching out to families to say, hey, your child didn't quite meet the cutoff that we usually look at, but we want to let you know the option if this is something you really want. So I feel like in the spring, we do a pretty good job of selecting those students, and the students that are on the cusp, when we have those conversations with families, we find, you know, it's kind of 50-50. Some parents are like, great, let's go for the challenge, and others say, you know what, that just doesn't sound like something my student's gonna really be interested in. So I will say we weren't approached by any families asking us to reconsider that. But if we were, of course, we would, you know, meet with that family and ask, you know, take their requests seriously.
Right, right. Okay, I was just curious. My next question is regarding that. So our numbers have grown for 7-8 math participation, which is fabulous, but I actually asked Dr. Milichewski last week, it's still like 2 classes for the grade, like 1 per team. So at what point are we saying like this class has gotten too large? Because some of the numbers, I think there's one of 28. So I kind of wondered if maybe there would be an extra class this year or something, but are conversations happening, like as we expand that, do we have the ability to have a second 7-8 math within the same team?
Yeah.
Instead of letting the class get so big, because it is a really rigorous class. You know, you're getting essentially 2 years of curriculum in one class. So to make that class even bigger is not ideal for those students.
Yeah. I mean, in my conversations with the middle school principals, you know, that came up, like if we have more students, what will happen? And my comment to them has always been, we're not putting a cutoff on the number of students. So if we reach the point where you feel like within your schedule, because the principals do their own scheduling for classes, but if they reach a point where they feel like it's not tenable with the structure they have, that would be something we would support them in. To this point, they haven't come to us with that concern, but we have reiterated that will not, you know, that will not be an obstacle to students moving into that class.
Okay, great.
Chuck wants to get some other questions in.
While they're asking questions, do you mind going back to that table that you have that just outlines the
Yeah.
enrollments? Because I think that may be of interest. I just want to make a point on that too. So you'll see that this year's numbers is 95 students who are in 7-8 math. And if you add that up for the years before, last year is 75, the year before 83, the year before 67, and the year before 74. And there's a lot of people who are worried, and I think like we had the Math Pathways meeting, that if you push kids too early to be in 7-8 math and they're not ready, we're then going to see an impact when having kids in Algebra 2 who aren't quite ready. I remember several high school teachers who feel like in the past, kids who've been pushed into those math too early come and they're underprepared. So I think we're trying to open doors for kids by, you know, in a lot of different ways, but we are also mindful of the drawback of not just opening it up to any student who we're setting them up, then we're seeing in Algebra 2 them really, you know, floundering too. So I just want to be mindful that, you know, it's not a goal for us to necessarily just keep increasing these numbers, because we know there's also, you know, a lot of people on the other side who say a stronger foundation in algebra is a better move than pushing a kid too early, so.
So you might have a few more, but let's give Chuck a chance, and then we can come back. And Carla, I thought I saw that your hand was up too, so we'll start with Chuck.
Thank you, Sarah. Just a question on the looking ahead. I think we had a fair amount of discussion at our meeting last spring about the math lab and the concerns about having it here. And I came out of that as looking at that as a low-hanging fruit, something we could take care of and get them a spot. And now I'm seeing here tonight we don't have a spot for that. That's concerning to me, because I felt like that was something a lot of people wanted us to take care of.
So it's a thing that everyone wants. The challenge is we thought it was a lower hanging fruit than maybe it was. The extended days in the space that we know that was the former math lab. There's not an easy spot for extended day to move that meets their needs as well, that wouldn't impact someone else as well. So we just haven't been able to identify easily yet something that works for everyone. Again, I think there's people in the high school math department who believe that there's, you know, sort of other ways around that. But we are still looking at space and trying to figure that out.
But am I correct?
You're correct.
That is
Yeah.
something I came out of that meeting hearing loud and clear.
Yeah.
Another reason for Killam to be built.
What's that?
Another reason for Killam.
Another reason for Killam to be, yeah, it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, Chuck.
Yeah. we spent many hours this summer working on spaces and movement. The other thing too, though, I think to Tom's point, we did get some feedback from some of the math teachers that they felt like there were things they could do internally as well to encourage students to use the math lab, even if it's in the library. There's some renewed energy in the department this year with the new department head. So we will keep an eye on that. As I mentioned, we have a new monitoring system that we will take a look at, what students are reporting after they use the math lab, and hopefully be able to use that while we continue to look for other possible spaces.
Thank you.
Carla?
Thank you, Sarah. So my question was around accelerated math in, like junior and senior year. And I guess in my head, I said, oh, the dual enrollment is a perfect avenue for that. Is that a pipe dream on my end, or is that something that?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. There's a variety of options we're looking at, whether it's, courses that are taught internally, or if we partner with a university. Those are all things that are potentials. And part of it too, as we're starting out, since it will just be a couple of students, we'll really be able to customize that experience to what those students are looking for, and not creating just like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right, because I know in the past that, parents would get together, a group of 5 parents would get together and then come to the school and, ask for a class, and then they would get a teacher to just teach those small group of students. But to me, the dual enrollment seems like a perfect solution for it.
We agree. That's the clubhouse favorite, I would think, is an option right now, but we're exploring all Sarah shared.
Thank you.
Okay, you have a few more questions, Erin, or are you good?
I just have just one more of a comment. I know you said you were going to gather feedback from the students who participated in the summer modules for middle school. I'm just particularly interested in the, we had 40 rising eighth graders who did one module, but then only 4 who completed it. So what happened there? And I'm sure there's some that just decided, I don't want to spend my summer doing math work, and that might be all of them, but I'm just curious if there was, if it had been structured differently, might we have captured more, I don't know. Same with 73 to 38. And I guess for them, there's a little less incentive because they are really just doing summer math work. It's not to change their course outcomes. So that makes even more sense to me. But for the rising eighth graders who maybe originally thought, I know oftentimes it's kids who were bored in 7th grade and did very well, and they think, they want something more for 8th grade. So I'll be curious to see the feedback on that. That's all.
I agree. I'm looking forward to seeing that feedback.
Sarah, can you move forward to the Metco Bridge slide? So this result set, unfortunately, it concerns me. I'm wondering if we received any feedback from the parents or the students involved. Was the location not right? Was the structure not right? I know it says consider having students for a full week. Do we need more than a week? As it is right now, it almost looks fair, unfair. It almost looks like we didn't do enough or didn't do we didn't have enough buy-in. I'm not sure what the right way to put it is. It looks troublesome. So do you have any immediate feedback from this process, and what thoughts of areas for improvement that we can have besides just the lessons learned?
Can I just ask one question for you to do? What looks troublesome?
Well, a couple things that jump out to me is, we only arranged 3 2-hour sessions in June and 2 2.5-hour sessions in August. If you compare that to, and we only had 6 students participate out of 13, right? If we compare that to some of the stuff that we have available, that we made available in here in Reading, we had 15 students here for 4 weeks at 3 hours a day for geometry. It's different, right? Geometry is different than what we're trying to achieve with this program, and I understand that, and the population is bigger that could engage in that 15 students. So there's a percentage issue there that comes into play, but what prevented us from doing 2 weeks of 3 hours a day or 4 weeks of 3 hours a day with this population as well in a place that they could reach? Was it transportation? Was it support? Was it our budget? Well, just, to me, I'm looking at it without full facts, but just the facts on the page. It seems a little inequitable in terms of what we were trying to do here, but maybe I'm off base. So I just wanted to put that out there and see if I'm missing something, which is entirely possible, or if the way we structured the program was a little bit too flexible, or what.
Well, we were restricted by the amount of the grant. The other piece too was it was sort of a late spring planning process. One of the pieces of feedback that we received, so Ramsey Merrill, who is someone that we worked with who's a Harvard intern, was the one who ran the program for us. And in debriefing with him, one of the really strong pieces of feedback he gave us, it was clear to him that some of the students really wanted to be there and they were motivated, and others, expressed that they were sort of being told by their parents they had to go. And so they were there, but there was very little, they weren't as invested. So if we planned earlier and we had the opportunity, like we had offered to 13 students, but only 6 were able to actually meet the dates because they already had, other things planned. So if we planned earlier, we would have perhaps been able to do a better selection process, having students there who perhaps were, motivated to be there. I think the other piece too is that we didn't see good success in this program with Zoom, and to be honest, with our summer modules for the middle school students, we offered a weekly Zoom session, and we only had 1 student ever come on. So that to us as adults probably seemed like a great way to touch base and to keep kids on track, but from the student point of view, they probably were like, this doesn't work for me. Our students that participated in this program did have good participation in the asynchronous assignments, and those were customized to their needs, and we used an online platform for those. So we did see that students participated in certain ways. I think as with anything, when you try something for the first time, you're not quite sure how many days is going to be the best fit, and so kind of coming out of it with the recommendation from the consultant that ran this for us, that having students there for a full week is one we certainly will consider, and obviously it's dependent upon funding as well.
I think,
I'm looking at the carryover we have in the METCO grant as well. I think while we have the 15,000 that was specific to this program, and I know we have other METCO challenges we need to continue to advocate for from a financing perspective, but I think there's a way for us to figure out the funding side of it in some way, shape, or form.
I would argue just as challenging as the funding is the model. Like, what's the model to close gaps? I think what makes this one different than the summer geometry, again, goes back to this is intended to be individualized gap closing for kids. This is not a Ramsey comes and teaches a 1-week class at a geometry class, or Ramsey come and teaches a 1-week. The purpose of this was designed as individualized based on kids' iReady data or other assessment data where their gaps were. Meet with them sort of this summer to provide direct instruction, and then design modules that could be done asynchronously that align to what that child needs. So I don't think it's a fair sort of a conclusion to make to necessarily think that it missed the mark yet if we don't see how these kids did. If we see there's 6 kids who went from low needs improvement to all of a sudden, mid proficient, I would say that's a huge success for these kids. This model was something that closed those gaps for those kids. Was it enough of, was it 6 kids for 15,000? Is that enough of bang for your buck? I don't know. We could debate that, but I'm really interested to see how these 6 kids did as something that was really targeted to their needs. Now, what I think we've talked about with the math coaches, we'd love to have a model in the future where more kids get this type of individualized support based on their own gaps, their own needs. Could we scale this in a way that's more cost effective? Could we scale this in a way that's, I think it'd be easier to build in Reading than it would be in Boston. But I think the intent of this was different than necessarily the summer geometry class too. I think this is more like what we would try to do with the class of what you were saying before with some of those 7th graders, who may want a little bit more to be able to take that next step. So I think we should, look closely at the data and sort of see how the students did. But definitely some other unique barriers that we're working with given sort of the Boston, location as well.
Can I just add one thought? I think maybe also zooming out a little bit to a higher level to look at how are we thinking about summer services
Yeah.
to expand opportunity and close gaps? And how are we doing that across for different populations so that we have consistency in our approach? So what is the goal of ESY for students with IEPs who get summer services? Is it to prevent regression or to close gaps? How do we make sure we're, moving kids forward in math otherwise? So not just looking at it population by population, but looking at it more holistically too in terms of our approach.
It's a great point.
Yeah, that applies to Title I too. We said Title I is only for
Yep.
avoiding,
Yep.
so avoiding regression. They said, so the Title I is just to avoid regression as opposed to closing gaps. Well, this is for closing gaps. The other math one for middle school is for closing gaps theoretically. So we just need to be, consistent. Why are we not closing gaps for Title I students? Why are we not closing gaps for special education students? To Sarah's point, let's make sure we're looking at it as completely as we can. And I'll add to my previous point, sometimes it's not just summer. Like we've done some stuff during the school year. We need to continue to figure out how to refine that too as we work our way through. But so much work has gone into this, and I'll express the appreciation as well. I don't mean to rain on the parade at the end, right? I just want to make sure that we're, again, continuing to strive to get better, so, yeah. And to your point, this slide doesn't tell the whole story yet. We don't have the return information on the investment yet. We just have the investment and without the full return information yet.
And if we don't see movement from these students, not a good return on investment, obviously, with these 6 kids, right? You hope that with the amount of money we poured into this, with the individualized attention, you'd see some movement.
So, okay. Sarah, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you.
Huge progress.
Thank you.
All right, I think that was the last agenda item, and somebody's bet at 7:30 was off slightly, but here we go.
My comment to myself.
Any further motions?
Motion to adjourn.
A second.
Motioned by Aaron, seconded by Carla. Roll call, we'll start with Sean.
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Tom, yes, and we're adjourned at 8:29.